Good morning, and welcome to the Leadership Think Tank. Today, we are going to dive into a leadership principle that is simple but powerful. But it is often overlooked, not because we don't know it, but because it requires something from us. So today, the title of my lesson is Leading by Example. Leading by example. So leadership is not first about position. It's not about title, platform, or authority. At its core, leadership, and you've heard me say this before, is influence. Leadership is influence. John Maxwell says it's influence, nothing more, nothing less. And the strongest form of influence is not what we say, but it's in what we do. Have you heard of the expression, monkey see, monkey do? You've got it. So people may listen to your words, but they will follow your actions. I don't know about you, but I've scrolled through some videos on I don't know, YouTube or TikTok, whatever it is, and see this little young man emulating his grandfather or his dad, walking around with pain in their back or whatever. It's really funny to see that. But the child is emulating that adult figure that they see. So if you want to know what kind of leader you are, don't look so much at your intentions, look at what people are becoming around you. Are you rubbing off on them? Are they picking up on some of the attributes that you carry? So today we're going to explore why leading by example matters, what it looks like, and how to live it out consistently. Point number one, we're going to look at the example of the foundation of credibility. Okay? Every leader wants credibility, right? It's cash, it's currency, credibility is. And it's what makes people trust you, follow you, and believe in you and your vision. But credibility is not built through speeches. It's built through consistency. If a leader says one thing but lives another, people notice. They're like, something's wrong with this picture. And over time, the disconnect erodes trust. So think about this. If you talk about discipline but lack it personally, that's a problem. If you emphasize integrity but cut corners, that's a problem. If you expect excellence but model mediocrity, it's a problem. People won't follow your instructions, they'll follow your example. So there's a powerful principle here. People reproduce what they see more than what they hear. Especially this, and I was talking on a podcast last night, but we all want the path of least resistance. We were talking about change last night and how we do not want to change as people. We do, but we don't enough, or we would be changing, right? And so it's hard to change, oftentimes. And so we want that path of least resistance, the path that we've been walking on over and over again, because we know it, it's familiar, even if it's dysfunction, it's familiar. So, by the way, it's important to do the changing. But here's one of the key points we pulled out of that teaching last night, and that is this. What self are you walking around with? Meaning, is it the self that others have implied on you? Is it the self of your parents or the self of your community? Or is it the person that God made you to be? Quirky, brilliant, whatever it is. That you're who God made you to be, number one. And then number two, you can work on the other things, like get the right weight desired and all of those things. It'll just take work, right? Let me hear you in the background. Are you teachable? Just say amen. All right. All right. So as leaders, we are always teaching even when we're not speaking. In 1 Corinthians 11:1, Paul says this, follow my example. Follow me as I follow Christ. Right? Notice that. He didn't just give instruction, he gave a pattern of life. Paul understood that leadership is lived before it is taught. That's powerful, isn't it? Imagine a coach who never practices, never trains, never puts in the work, but expects the team to perform at a high level. Eventually, the team loses respect, not because of what he says, but because of what he doesn't do. That's important. So the same is true in leadership, which leads us to point number 2. Example sets the culture. Example sets the culture. I was just talking to my wife about that last night. Example sets the culture. So whether you realize it or not, you are creating a culture wherever you lead. And that could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. But you're setting the culture. Our state overseer for our church even, he said, you have your own house rules at your house, right? You have your house rules. This is what we do in this house, right? And he was saying the same thing applies for pastors and their churches. You have house rules, and this is how we run this house. This is how we run this particular church. It's going to be different down the street because they have their own house rules. You know, this is the way we do church. This is the way we do life, right? Same thing goes for organizations. This is the way the head of the company runs things. And listen, leadership trickles down. Okay? So think of Aaron's beard, if you want to get biblical on it. The oil runs down the beard, right? And right on down. So leadership is top down. It rolls down. That's what it does. And it influences everybody, the whole culture of everything. So if you have a very discombobulated life, it's going to show up in your business. It's going to show up in your ministry. That's just the way it works, right? So whether or not you realize it, you are creating a culture wherever you lead. And culture is not what's written on the wall. It's what's lived out daily. So that's a powerful thought to think about, isn't it? And culture flows from the leader. If the leader is positive, the culture becomes encouraging. If the leader is disciplined, the culture becomes focused. If the leader is servant-hearted, the culture becomes humble. If the leader is committed, the culture becomes resilient. But the opposite is also true. If the leader is negative, the culture becomes toxic. If the leader is inconsistent, the culture becomes unstable. If the leader is passive, the culture becomes unmotivated. Think about that for a second. You don't get the culture you preach, you get the culture you model. That's worth posting on Twitter, the old Twitter of days, X now, I guess it is. It's noteworthy right there. You don't get the culture you preach, you get the culture you model. So what are you modeling? For example, if you want your team to show up early, be the first one there. If you want your people to go the extra mile, let them see you doing it. If you want unity, let them see how you handle conflict. People are constantly asking, what does it look like to be a part of this team, this church, this organization, this family? Right? What does it take to be a part of it? And the answer they get is you. Jesus didn't just teach servanthood, he demonstrated it. All throughout Scripture, we see that. In John 13, he washed the disciples' feet. And he said, I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. He didn't just command humility, he modeled it. Right? That's powerful. Point number 3, example multiplies leadership. So here's where this principle becomes powerful this morning. When you lead by example, you don't just lead followers, you develop leaders. John Maxwell has a very powerful book called Developing the Leaders Around You. Or start with the first one, Developing the Leader Within You. John often says, it's easy to lead others, it's quite another thing to lead yourself. So that's important. Because people don't just imitate behavior, they internalize it and pass it on. Right? So leadership that is only verbal stays shallow. Leadership that is modeled becomes reproducible. So think of this. Instruction informs, but example transforms. Example transforms. And when people see something lived out constantly or consistently, rather, it becomes real to them. And this is how leadership multiplies. Especially if you have visual learners in your group. They'll certainly learn more by what you do than what you say. But this is how leadership multiplies. If you want to raise up leaders who are faithful, consistent, passionate, and committed, then those qualities have to be visible in your life first. For example, a leader who consistently shows us how to be prepared and doesn't have to demand preparation, people start doing it naturally. They start getting prepared because they don't want to be caught not being prepared, right? So a leader who treats people with respect creates a culture where respect becomes the norm. I mean, that's a passion of mine, for instance. Treat people with respect. See people as a 10, right? Let them work on if they want to be a 1 or not. But teach and emulate them that they're powerful, that they are that they have qualities that your organization, your church, your family needs. But there's that respect there. Respect them. And then in turn, they will usually respect you. So a leader who treats people with respect, then respect becomes the norm. And your life becomes the training manual. Again, not so much what you say, but what you do. First, in 2 Timothy 2:2, Paul tells Timothy to pass on what he's learned to faithful people who will teach others also. Again, follow me as I follow Christ. I've got a good example to follow here now, right? I've got Christ to follow, so follow me. I'm taking you to the path that I see the Lord doing in my life or in our organization. That's multiplication. But it starts with a life that can be observed and imitated. All right? So how do we live this out? How do we live out this kind of thing? Again, I've just been speaking, but how do we apply it practically? There's 3 practical questions every leader should ask themselves. And here it is. Number 1, what am I modeling daily? If someone copied your habits, would they become the kind of person you are trying to lead them to be? I was leading worship, and I would do this thing like this. I don't know if you noticed that just now. Rewind it and watch it back. But one gentleman came up to me the other day. I'm sorry, not the other day, but several years ago. And he said, "Hey, Pastor, what is that when you go on stage?" And I said, "What?" He says, "What is that when you..." I said, "Well, that's just me swallowing phlegm." But my point is, the reason why I brought it up this morning is because people watch what you do. And he thought that was some kind of vocal exercise or something that was helping me when I was singing. All right, so what am I modeling daily? Number two, where is the gap between what I say and what I do? Leadership grows when that gap closes. And number three, what do I want to reproduce in others? Whatever that is, I need to start living it out more intentionally. So if this is the path and the procedure and the culture you want to have, you have to start living it. And as a sidebar right now, if people were to attend your funeral, what would you want them to say about you? Or even say to you as you're laying in the casket? It's a morbid thought, but think about it. What would you want people to say about you? And I brought that up to say this: live in a way that they will speak well of you. I know of a couple of people specifically that, not perfect people, but they were consistent and they were committed. And they set the example. And I loved it because you got the genuine deal. Who you saw on stage is who you saw off stage. Rough around the edges, but consistent and faithful, right? So powerful. And I would love for someone to say that about me at the end of my life. He was quirky. He didn't have it all together, but he was consistent. And I would love to hear that. Right? So what we do consistently will eventually be reflected in the people around us. So I'm going to leave you with this. Leadership is not about being perfect, which we all try to do. Sidebar, I was officiating a wedding, and I was trying to walk in, dignified and proper. And the step to the stage was a little higher than normal, and I didn't quite get my foot up high enough, and I tripped. And I said, "Oh, well." And the crowd laughed, and that was the way it went. It's leadership is not about being perfect. It's about being intentional. Okay. People are not looking for flawless leaders. They're looking for real ones, consistent ones, and authentic ones. We went to a concert Friday night with Petra. Yes, Petra, from way back in the day. Over 50 years they've been doing ministry and singing and rocking out. And John Schlitt, the lead singer, on stage, just putting on a great show. He was backing up and he tripped and fell and was just shaking his head. Well, there you go. And so he had to swallow his pride and get back up and hit it again. He says, "Okay, folks, don't keep thinking about that. I made a mistake, but let's get back to it," right? So people are not looking for flawless leader. They're looking for real ones. And your example has more power than you think. Long after people forget what you said, they'll remember how you lived. Remember this: people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So lead in that way. So if you want to lead well, don't just point the way, walk the way, or John Maxwell says, show the way, and invite others to follow. Okay? Is that good stuff? Wow, I learned something today. That's really good, isn't it? Well, I hope you enjoyed it. And look, do me a favor and check out our other leadership lessons on YouTube. And you can also comment, share with us what you're thinking, challenge an idea, or provide some feedback of how you applied it in your own life. And I'd love to hear from you. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/Connection Point Coloma. Yeah, it's Connection Point Coloma on YouTube. So check that out, and check out our leadership playlist. There's also a podcast version of the playlist also on YouTube. So you can just hear leadership lessons, or you can go and check out the other things that we have there on that YouTube channel. So thank you for joining us today. Lead well, lead by example, be authentic, be the person that people will want to emulate. All right? Okay. God bless.